The chamber trembled, not from any weapon, not yet, but from the weight of what had just been said. A low hum pulsed through the crystalline walls of the Galactic Council's sanctum, a sprawling dome of light and shadow that hung in the void like a god's forgotten jewel. Hundreds of species sat in their tiered seats, their forms a chaotic tapestry of scales, feathers, and glowing tendrils. Eyes, some compound, some singular, some blind but all-seeing, fixed on the human envoy standing alone at the center. His name was Elias Kor, and he carried the kind of quiet that made the air feel like it was lying to you, hiding something jagged beneath its stillness. "You heard me," Elias said, his voice rough as gravel, cutting through the murmurs that rippled across the chamber. "Humanity's done playing by your rules. We've built something you can't ignore. Dark matter warships, faster than your fastest, stronger than your strongest, and they're already out there, waiting." The council erupted. A Skravath delegate, its 6 limbs thrashing like storm-whipped branches, screeched a protest in a language that sounded like glass shattering. A Lumora, its bioluminescent skin flaring red with indignation, rose and bellowed, "This is an outrage, a violation of the Concordance." Others joined the chorus, accusations, threats, pleas, but Elias didn't flinch. He stood there, hands clasped behind his back, his gray uniform creased but unyielding, like he'd walked out of a war zone and into their pristine little world without bothering to dust off the ash. I watched from the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. "My name's Talia Vren, and I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in the council chamber, not on this station, not anywhere near Elias Kor. I was a nobody, a maintenance tech with a knack for slipping through security grids, a human who'd spent her life scraping by on the fringes of the galaxy's glittering core. But I'd heard the rumors. We all had. Whispers of ships that didn't just bend space but tore it apart, fueled by something the Council had forbidden centuries ago. Dark matter. And when I'd seen Elias's shuttle dock, when I'd caught the hard edge in his eyes through a cracked viewport, I knew I had to follow him. I had to know if it was true. The High Arbiter, a towering figure draped in robes that shimmered like liquid starlight, raised a clawed hand. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. "Envoy Kor," it said, its voice a deep resonance that vibrated in my bones. "You speak of war. You bring chaos to a peace we have bled to maintain. Explain yourself, or the consequences will be dire." Elias tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Peace? You call this peace? Your concordance is a leash, Arbiter. You've kept us small, kept us weak, while you hoard your tech and your worlds. Humanity's tired of begging for scraps. We've taken what's ours." The chamber held its breath. I edged closer, my boots silent on the polished floor, my pulse loud enough to betray me if anyone cared to listen. Elias wasn't wrong. I'd seen it. Earth's colonies choking on dust, children born with lungs too weak to breathe unfiltered air, all while the Council's favored races thrived on planets we'd never touch. But warships? Dark matter? That was a line no one had crossed. Not until now. The Arbiter leaned forward, its eyes narrowing to slits of cold light. "You claim power, but power without proof is noise. Show us, human. Show us these warships." Elias's smirk widened, and my stomach dropped. He raised a hand, and a hollow projector flickered to life above him. The image was grainy at first, then sharpened into something that stole the air from my lungs. A fleet. Dozens of ships, sleek and black as the void itself, their hulls rippling with an energy that didn't reflect light but swallowed it. They moved like predators, cutting through space with a grace that felt wrong, unnatural. The Council gasped, recoiled, some even prayed in their strange tongues. I couldn't look away. These, Elias said, his voice low and dangerous, are the Eclipse Legion, and they're not here to negotiate. The chamber exploded again, but this time it wasn't just noise. It was fear. Real, raw fear. I pressed myself against the wall, my mind racing. I'd wanted truth, and now I had it. Humanity wasn't just rising. We were clawing our way up, bloodied and furious, and we'd built monsters to do it. But as Elias stood there, unbowed, I couldn't shake the question gnawing at me. What happens when the monsters turn on us? The holo image of the Eclipse Legion hung in the air like a death sentence, its dark ships casting shadows that seemed to crawl across the chamber floor. The Galactic Council's outrage had melted into something uglier, panic laced with desperation. A Verk delegate, its insectoid mandibles clicking furiously, shrieked about sanctions, while a gelatinous Othrin pulsed warnings of annihilation. But Elias Core didn't move, didn't blink. He just watched them unravel, his silence louder than their chaos. I couldn't breathe right. My chest felt tight, like the air itself was pressing down on me, and my hands shook as I gripped the edge of a maintenance panel I'd ducked behind. I'd seen plenty in my years. Riots on colony outposts, smugglers gutted over bad deals. But this was a reckoning. Humanity had always been the scrappy underdog, the species the Council patted on the head and sent back to its crumbling worlds. Now we were the ones baring teeth, and I didn't know if I should be proud or terrified. The High Arbiter's voice cut through the din, sharp as a blade. You threaten the balance, Core. You threaten us. If these ships are real, if they are as you claim, then you have ignited a fire that will consume your kind first. Elias laughed, a low, bitter sound that made my skin prickle. Consume us? Arbiter, we've been burning for decades. You just didn't care to look. Your balance is a lie, and we're done pretending it's not. He stepped forward, his boots echoing in the sudden hush. The Eclipse Legion isn't a threat, it's a promise. Step aside, or we'll carve our own path. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. I'd grown up on stories of Earth's defiance, how we'd clawed our way into the stars despite the odds, how we'd survived when every other species said we wouldn't. But there was something in his eyes, a hardness that went beyond defiance. It was hunger, cold and endless, and it scared me more than the Council's bluster ever could. A new voice broke the tension, smooth and oily, slithering into the silence. It was Councillor Zethra, a serpentine Clitheran with scales that glinted like polished obsidian. And what of the cost, human? She hissed, her forked tongue flicking the air. Dark matter is forbidden for a reason. It's unstable. It corrupts. Have you not considered what your toys might do to your own people? Elias turned to her, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something. Anger, maybe, or doubt. It was gone as fast as it came. The cost? He said. The cost was paid by the millions who died while you sat here debating our worth. We've mastered it. That's all you need to know. Mastered it. The words hung there, heavy and untested. I didn't know much about dark matter, just scraps I'd overheard from engineers and smugglers. It was the stuff of nightmares, a force that could bend reality but break it just as easily. The Council had banned it after the Cataclysm, a war that left entire systems as lifeless husks. If Elias was lying, if we hadn't mastered it, then Zethra was right. We'd be the first to burn. The Arbiter raised its hand again, and the hollow flickered out, plunging the chamber into a dim, uneasy glow. Enough, it said. You have made your declaration, Envoy Core. Now we will make ours. The Council will convene. You will wait. Elias nodded, a curt dip of his head, and turned to leave. The chamber buzzed as he walked out, his steps deliberate, unhurried. I should have stayed put, kept my head down like always, but I couldn't. I slipped through a service hatch, my heart pounding as I trailed him into the station's labyrinthine corridors. I had to know more, had to see what he'd do next. He didn't go far. In a shadowed alcove, he stopped, staring at a comm device in his hand. I crept closer, close enough to hear the crackle of a voice on the other end. "Core, it's done," it said, low and urgent. "The Legion's in position. First strike's ready. Your call." Elias didn't answer right away. He just stood there, his jaw tight, his fingers hovering over the device. Then he muttered, "Not yet. Let them sweat." He killed the comm and leaned against the wall, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for years. I froze, my mind racing. First strike? Against who? The Council? A species? Us? I didn't know Elias Core, didn't know what drove him. But in that moment, I saw it. The weight of a choice that could end everything. And I realized something worse. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was part of this, whether I wanted to be or not. The corridor felt colder after Elias's words, like the station itself was holding its breath. I pressed myself into the shadows, my back against the frigid metal wall, watching him through the dim flicker of a dying light panel. He didn't move for a long time, just stood there, head bowed, the comm device dangling in his hand like a loaded gun. I could still hear that voice echoing in my skull. "First strike's ready. Your call?" It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was real, and it was close, and I didn't know if I'd stumbled into history or a massacre. I should have run, should have slipped back through the ducts, found a transport off this floating tomb, and buried myself in some backwater colony where no one would care about my name. But my feet wouldn't move. Something about Elias Core held me there. Maybe the way he carried himself, like a man who'd already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. Or maybe it was the questions clawing at me. Who was he striking? Why? And how the hell had humanity gone from scavengers to this? He shifted suddenly, pocketing the comm, and I flinched, my boot scraping the floor. The sound was tiny, a whisper in the hum of the station, but his head snapped toward me like a predator locking on to prey. "Who's there?" His voice was low, sharp, a blade unsheathed. Panic hit me like a punch. I bolted, ducking into a side passage, my breath ragged as I wove through the maze of pipes and conduits I'd spent years memorizing. Footsteps pounded behind me, steady, relentless. He wasn't yelling, wasn't calling for guards. He was hunting me himself, and that scared me more than anything. I rounded a corner and slammed into a dead end, a rusted bulkhead blocking my path. My hands scrabbled at it, searching for a latch, a seam, anything, but it was solid. The footsteps stopped, and I turned, heart in my throat, to see Elias standing there, silhouetted against the faint light. His gray eyes pinned me in place, cold and unreadable. "You're human," he said, not a question. He stepped closer, and I caught the faint scar running down his jaw, the kind you get from shrapnel or a fight you barely survived. "What's a human doing skulking around a council station?" My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. "I work here. Maintenance. I saw you in the chamber. I had to know." He studied me, his gaze cutting through the lies I hadn't even told yet. "Know what?" "If it's true," I blurted. "The Warships, the Eclipse Legion, what you're planning?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned against the wall, crossing his arms, like we were having a casual chat instead of a standoff. "And what do you think I'm planning, maintenance girl?" "My name's Talia," I snapped, anger flaring past the fear. "And I think you're about to start a war we can't win. You're playing with something, dark matter, that could rip us apart before it ever touches them." His lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You're half right. It's a war. But we can win it. We have to." "Why?" The word came out raw, almost a plea. What's worth risking everything?" He looked away then, and for the first time, I saw something crack in that iron facade. Something tired, something human. "Because they've already taken everything," he said quietly. "Earth's dying, Talia. Not in 100 years, not in 50. Now the Council knows it. They've known for decades, and they've done nothing." I stared at him, the weight of it sinking in. I'd seen the reports, colonies failing, air turning toxic, but I'd thought it was neglect, not a death sentence. "So this is revenge?" "No." His voice hardened again, steel snapping back into place. "It's survival. The Legion isn't just weapons, it's ships, colony ships. We're taking what they won't give us. Worlds, resources, a future I wanted to argue, to say there had to be another way, but the words stuck in my throat. I'd seen too much. Families starving, ships turned away from Council ports. If he was right, if Earth was really gone, then maybe this was all we had left. But that didn't make it less insane. Before I could respond, his comm buzzed again. He pulled it out, and the same voice crackled through. "Core, they're moving. Council scrambling fighters. We need your orders now." Elias glanced at me, then back at the comm. "Hold position," he said. "I'm coming." He pocketed it and straightened, fixing me with a look that felt like a warning. "You're in this now, Talia. Run or follow. Your choice." He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the dark, my mind screaming one question. What the hell had I just stepped into? I stood there in the dark, Elias's footsteps fading into the hum of the station, and it felt like the universe was splitting under my feet. Run or follow. That's what he'd said, like it was simple, like I could just pick a side and not look back. But running meant going back to the life I'd always known. Crawling through ducts, fixing leaks, pretending the galaxy wasn't chewing us up and spitting us out. Following meant stepping into whatever madness he was dragging us toward. A war I didn't understand, with weapons I couldn't trust. My hands clenched into fists, nails biting into my palms, and I cursed under my breath. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't a hero. I was just Talia Vren, a girl who'd learned to survive by keeping her head down. So why the hell was I moving? My legs carried me after him before my brain caught up, boots pounding the metal floor, my breath ragged in my throat. I didn't know what I was chasing. Answers, maybe, or just a chance to see this through, but I couldn't stop. The corridor twisted ahead, lights flickering like they were mocking me, and I caught sight of Elias just as he reached a docking bay hatch. He didn't turn, didn't slow, but something told me he knew I was there. He punched a code into the panel, and the hatch hissed open, revealing a sleek, unmarked shuttle that looked too human for this alien station. "Last chance," he said without looking back. "You step through, there's no undoing it." I hesitated, my heart slamming against my ribs. "And if I don't?" "Then you're a ghost on a dying world," he said, stepping inside. "Your call." That hit harder than I expected. A ghost. That's what I'd been, wasn't it? Drifting through life, invisible, waiting for the end to creep up quiet and slow. I thought of my sister, Mara, back on Earth's outer colonies. Her coughs getting worse every year, her letters shorter, emptier. If Elias was right, if Earth was choking out its last breaths, then staying here was just waiting for her to fade. I gritted my teeth and followed him in. The shuttle's interior was stark. Gray walls, a pilot's console, a few crates strapped down tight. Elias slid into the pilot's seat, hands moving over the controls with a precision that spoke of years, maybe decades, behind a helm. I hovered near the door, feeling out of place, like a kid who'd wandered into a war room. "Strap in," he said, not glancing up. "We're not sightseeing." I fumbled with the harness on a jump seat, my fingers clumsy as the engines hummed to life. The shuttle lurched, and through the viewport, I saw the station's bay doors peel open, revealing the black expanse beyond. Stars glittered, cold and distant, but there was something else out there. Shapes moving in the void, too fast, too dark. My stomach twisted. The Eclipse Legion. They were real and they were close. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "To the Revenant," he said. "Flagship. You want answers? You'll get them there." The shuttle shot forward, and the station shrank behind us, a fragile speck against the endless dark. I gripped the harness, my mind racing. The Revenant. I'd heard rumors, whispers of a ship that didn't just fight, but devoured, a monster born from humanity's rage, and now I was hurtling toward it, toward a fleet that could rewrite everything or burn it all down. Elias's comm crackled again. "Core, Council fighters are launching. They're locking onto our signals. Orders?" "Engage cloaks," he said, his voice calm, almost bored. "Let them chase ghosts." "Copy. Cloaks up. They're blind." The line went dead. I stared at him. "Cloaks? You mean—" "Dark matter fields," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "Bends light, scrambles sensors. They won't see us until we want them to." I swallowed hard. That kind of tech wasn't just advanced. It was impossible, or it was supposed to be. How did we even build this? "Desperation," he said, turning back to the controls, "and a few good minds who stopped caring about rules." The viewport shifted as we approached the fleet, and my breath caught. The Revenant loomed ahead, massive and jagged, its hull a void that swallowed the starlight around it. Smaller ships flanked it, their forms rippling like heat waves, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. This wasn't just a fleet. It was a declaration, a fist raised against the galaxy. Elias guided the shuttle into a docking bay, and as the clamps locked us in, he stood, fixing me with that same hard stare. "Welcome to the fight, Talia. Hope you're ready." I wasn't, not even close, but as the hatch opened and I stepped onto the Revenant's deck, I knew there was no turning back now. The Revenant's docking bay swallowed us whole, a cavern of steel and shadow that smelled of ozone and sweat. The air buzzed with activity. Crews in patched uniforms darted between crates, their voices clipped and urgent, while the low thrum of machinery pulsed like a heartbeat. I stepped out behind Elias, my boots clanging on the grated floor, and felt like I'd walked into a storm that was just waiting to break. These weren't the polished soldiers of council vids or the sleek drones of their fleets. These were people, gritty, tired, human, and they moved with a purpose that made my skin prickle. Elias didn't pause, didn't explain. He strode forward, barking orders to a wiry tech who saluted and scrambled off. I trailed him, my eyes darting everywhere, past the weld scars on the walls, the dark matter conduits snaking overhead like veins, the faint glow of holoscreens flickering with data I couldn't read. This wasn't just a ship. It was a fortress, a weapon, a lifeline. And I was starting to see why Elias had called it survival. "You gonna keep gawking? Or you got something useful to say?" He tossed over his shoulder, not breaking stride. I bristled, jogging to catch up. "I'm here, aren't I? Maybe start with why you're dragging me into this instead of leaving me back there." He stopped so suddenly I almost crashed into him. He turned, his gray eyes boring into mine, and for a second I thought he'd sent me packing. "You followed me, Talia. I didn't drag you anywhere. You want out? There's the hatch. But if you're staying, you're not just a passenger. Not on this ship." I opened my mouth to argue, then shut it. He was right. I'd made the choice, stupid as it might have been. "Fine," I said. "What do you need?" He jerked his head toward a corridor. "Come with me. You'll see." We moved deeper into the Revenant, the noise of the bay fading into a tense quiet. The halls narrowed, the air growing heavier, and I caught glimpses of crew, some young, some old, all with that same hard edge in their eyes. A woman with a prosthetic arm nodded at Elias as we passed. A kid, barely 16, hauled a crate twice his size without a word. These weren't just fighters. They were survivors. People who'd lost too much to care about fear. Elias led me to a command deck, a circular room ringed with screens and dominated by a massive hollow table. A dozen officers stood around it, their faces taut as they studied a projection of the sector. Council stations blinking red, the Eclipse Legion's ships pulsing black. A woman with short-cropped hair and a scar across her cheek glanced up as we entered. "Corps," she said, her voice rough. "They're deploying more fighters, 3 squadrons closing fast." "Numbers?" Elias asked, stepping to the table. 40, maybe 50. Light craft, but they've got disruptors. They'll try to pin us." Elias nodded, his jaw tight. "Cloaks holding?" "For now," she said, "but if they get a lock, we're lit up." I hovered near the edge, my pulse racing. 40 fighters against this fleet? It sounded like suicide. For them, not us. But the tension in the room told me it wasn't that simple. I cleared my throat, feeling every eye snap to me. What's the plan?" The scarred woman raised an eyebrow, but Elias cut in. "We don't run," he said. "We hit first. The Legion's built to take the fight to them, not wait it out." "Hit them?" I echoed, incredulous. "You're talking about starting a war right now?" "It's already started," he said, his voice flat. "The Council's been bleeding us dry for years. This—" He gestured at the hollow table, the ships, the room. "This is us bleeding them back." I stared at him, then at the officers, their faces grim but resolute. I wanted to scream that this was insane, that we couldn't just charge into a galactic superpower with a handful of ships, dark matter or not. But then I thought of Mara again, her last letter, the way she'd signed it with a shaky hand, and the words died in my throat. If this was survival, maybe it was worth the madness. Before I could say anything, an alarm blared, red lights flashing across the deck. "Contact!" someone shouted. "Council fighters inbound, 5 minutes!" Elias didn't flinch. He leaned over the table, his voice calm as ice. "All ships, battle stations, target their lead squadron, dark matter cannons full charge." The room erupted into motion, orders flying, screens lighting up with trajectories and power readings. I stumbled back, my heart hammering, as the Revenant shuddered beneath us, its engines roaring to life. Elias glanced at me, just for a second, and there was something in his eyes, regret, maybe, or resolve. "Hold on, Talia," he said. "It's about to get loud." And then the first cannon fired, and the galaxy shook. The Revenant trembled as the dark matter cannon unleashed its fury, a deep, bone-rattling boom that drowned out the alarms. I grabbed the edge of the hollow table to steady myself, my eyes locked on the viewport as a streak of black energy tore through the void. It hit the lead council squadron like a fist through glass, ships disintegrating into silent bursts of light, debris scattering like ash. The officers around me didn't cheer. They just watched, faces hard, hands moving over controls with grim precision. Elias stood at the center, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Second salvo now!" Target their flankers. Another shudder, another lance of darkness, and more fighters vanished. I couldn't look away, couldn't breathe. This wasn't war like I'd imagined. Clean, distant, heroic. It was slaughter, raw and ugly, and we were the ones wielding the blade. The scarred woman, Captain Riza, I'd heard someone call her, snapped. "They're breaking formation, scattered signals, 10 left." Her voice held an edge of triumph, but Elias didn't relax. He leaned closer to the hollow table, eyes narrowing at the flickering red dots. "They're not retreating," he muttered. They're calling for backup. My stomach dropped. Backup? I said, louder than I meant. You mean more are coming? He didn't answer, just nodded to Reza. Get the Wraith and Spectre in position. We're not waiting for their reinforcements. I wanted to scream at him, ask how he could be so calm when we'd just kicked a hornet's nest, but the deck lurched again, and I swallowed it down. The viewport showed the Eclipse Legion shifting, ships sliding through space like shadows, their cloaks rippling as they flanked the remaining fighters. Another blast, and the last of the squadron was gone. Silence fell, heavy and wrong, broken only by the hum of the ship. Elias turned to me, his expression unreadable. You wanted to know what we're doing. This is it. We hit hard, we take what's ours, and we don't stop. For how long? I shot back, my voice shaking. Until they send a fleet we can't outrun? Until we don't have to run, he said, and there was something in his tone. Pain, maybe, buried deep. Earth's gone, Talia. Not dying. Gone. The Council let it rot. This is all we've got left. I stared at him, the weight of it crashing down. Gone. Mara's face flashed in my mind, her thin smile, her fragile hope, and I felt something break inside me. You're sure? I whispered. He nodded just once. I saw it, nothing left but dust. Before I could process that, Reza's voice cut in. Core, long-range sensors, Council Dreadnought, inbound, ETA 20 minutes. Elias's jaw tightened. Full power to engines. We're not fighting that today. He looked at me again, softer this time. You're still here? Why? I didn't have an answer, just a hollow ache and a fire I couldn't name. Because I have to be, I said. And as the Revenant surged forward, I knew it was true. The Revenant roared through the void, engines screaming as we pulled away from the wreckage of the Council fighters. The holotable flickered with updates, red blips multiplying in the distance, the Dreadnought's signal growing stronger, a hulking predator sniffing out our trail. I stood rooted to the command deck, my hands gripping the edge of a console, the taste of bile sharp in my throat. Elias's words echoed in my skull, Earth's gone. And I couldn't shake the image of Mara, her last letter crumpled in my pocket back on the station, now a relic of a world that didn't exist anymore. I wanted to hate him for saying it, for making it real, but all I felt was a numb, gnawing void where my anger should have been. Status, Elias barked, his voice steady as ever, like we weren't running from a ship that could crack us open with one shot. Reza swiped at her screen, her scarred face lit by the glow. Cloaks at 80%. Dreadnoughts still scanning. Haven't locked us yet, but they're closing. 12 minutes. Push the engines, he said. Divert power from secondary systems if you have to. A young officer, barely older than the kid I'd seen hauling crates, piped up, his voice cracking. Sir, that'll strain the dark matter core. We could... Do it, Elias cut him off, not even glancing his way. The kid hesitated, then obeyed, and the ship groaned under the surge, a deep vibration rattling my bones. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. What happens if they catch us? I asked, stepping closer to Elias. That dreadnought, it's not some patrol boat. It'll tear through us. He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the holotable. It won't catch us. You don't know that. My voice rose, sharp and ragged, drawing stares from the crew. You're gambling with all of us, hundreds of people, maybe thousands. For what? To prove a point? He turned then, slow and deliberate, and the weight of his stare pinned me in place. Not a point, he said, low and fierce. A chance. You think I want this? You think I woke up one day and decided to burn everything down? I didn't choose this war, Talia. It chose us when the Council turned its back. I wanted to argue, to tell him there had to be another way. But the memory of Earth, dust, he'd said, choked me silent. I thought of the colonies I'd worked on, the kids with hollow eyes, the air filters that failed year after year. If he was right, if it was all gone, then what was left but this? Still, the dreadnought loomed in my mind, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Reza's voice broke the tension. 9 minutes. They're pinging harder, cloaks dropping to 65. Elias cursed under his breath, then turned to the comms officer. Signal the Wraith and Spectre. Tell them to break off, flank wide, and draw fire if they have to. We need breathing room. The officer nodded, relaying the order, and I felt a pang of guilt. Those ships, more humans, more lives, were bait now, all to keep the Revenant alive. I wondered who was on them, what they'd left behind, but there was no time to dwell. The deck shuddered again, harder this time, and a warning light flared red on Reza's console. "Core's overheating," she said, her tone clipped. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before it vents or blows." Elias didn't flinch. "Reroute coolant, buy us time." I couldn't take it anymore. "And then what?" I snapped. "We're running on fumes, Elias. Even if we dodge this thing, where do we go? What's the plan?" He met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw a crack in that iron wall, a flicker of something raw, almost desperate. "There's a system," he said. "Uncharted, 3 jumps from here. Worlds we can take, rebuild on. That's where we're headed. That's the plan." I blinked, caught off guard. "Rebuild? You mean colonies? This whole fleet? It's not just for fighting?" "It's for living," he said, quieter now. "But we have to get there first." Before I could process that, the ship jolted violently, throwing me against the console. Alarms screamed, and Reza shouted, "They've got a partial lock! Disruptor wave incoming!" Elias grabbed the table, his voice rising over the chaos. "Evasive pattern now! Full power to shields!" The Revenant twisted, a sickening lurch that sent my stomach into my throat, and through the viewport, I saw it. A ripple of energy tearing through space, grazing us, lighting up the dark. The shields held, barely, but the core warning blared louder. 6 minutes, Reza said. 6 minutes until we were either free or dead. I looked at Elias, his face set like stone, and realized something terrifying. He wasn't sure we'd make it, not really, but he'd fight anyway. Because he had to, because we all did. And as the dreadnought closed in, I knew I was in too deep to do anything but fight with him. The Revenant screamed through the void, a wounded beast clawing for freedom as the Council dreadnought's disruptor waves lit up the dark behind us. The command deck was a storm of noise, alarms shrieking, officers shouting, the Corps' warning pulsing red like a heartbeat on the edge of failure. I clung to the console, my knuckles white, my eyes darting between the holotable and the viewport where death loomed closer every second. Elias stood at the center of it all, his voice a lifeline in the chaos, barking orders with a calm that felt like defiance against the inevitable. "Jump drive status," he yelled, his hands braced on the table as the ship shuddered again. "Charging!" the young officer shouted back, his face slick with sweat. 80%, 90, we're almost there." "Almost isn't enough," Reza snapped, her fingers flying over her controls. "Core's at critical, 3 minutes, maybe less, before it vents. Dreadnoughts at 4. I felt the math like a punch. 3 minutes to live, 4 to die. My chest tightened, and I looked at Elias, searching for something, anything to hold on to. He met my gaze, just for a heartbeat, and I saw it again. That flicker of doubt, buried under the steel. He wasn't a god, wasn't a savior. He was just a man, betting everything on a roll of the dice, and I'd followed him into the gamble. "Divert all power to the drive," he said, his voice low but unyielding. "Shields, weapons, lights, everything. Get us that jump." The crew hesitated, a collective intake of breath. then obeyed. The deck dimmed, screens winking out, the hum of secondary systems fading to silence. The Revenant felt naked, exposed, but the jump drive's indicator spiked. 95, 98. I held my breath, counting seconds I couldn't track, as the dreadnought's shadow grew in the viewport, its weapons glowing hot with the promise of obliteration. "Jump ready!" the officer cried, and Elias didn't waste a second. "Now!" The universe folded. One moment I was staring at our end, a wall of light and fire bearing down. Then nothing. A lurch, a scream of metal, a sensation like being pulled inside out, and the viewport went black. Silence hit, heavier than the chaos, and for a terrifying second I thought we'd failed, that the core had blown, that we were dead. Then the screens flickered back, and a new starfield swam into view. Unfamiliar, wild, untouched. "We made it," Reza breathed, her voice ragged with disbelief. "First jump clear, 2 more to go." The crew erupted. Shouts, laughter, a few sobs. But Elias didn't join them. He straightened, exhaling slow, and turned to the holotable, already plotting the next move. I watched him, my legs shaky as I pushed off the console, and something clicked into place. This wasn't victory, not yet. It was a reprieve, a chance to keep running, keep fighting. But it was something. "Talia," he said, not looking up. "You still with me?" I swallowed, my throat dry. "Yeah," I said, quieter than I meant. "I'm here." He nodded just once, and I knew he'd heard the weight in it. The grief for Earth, for Mara, for everything we'd lost. But there was no time to mourn, not now. The Wraith and Spectre signaled in, battered but alive, and the fleet regrouped, limping toward the second jump. The dreadnought was gone, for now, but the Council wouldn't stop. They'd hunt us, chase us to the edge of the galaxy if they had to, and we'd keep going, because that's what humans did. Hours later, after the third jump, we reached it, the uncharted system Elias had promised. The viewport filled with a sight that stole my breath. A blue-green planet, swirling with clouds, orbiting a steady yellow star. It wasn't Earth, couldn't be, but it was alive, real, a place to start again. The crew gathered, silent, staring at what might be home, and I felt tears prick my eyes, anger, relief, hope, all tangled together. Elias stood beside me, his voice soft for the first time. "Worth it?" I thought of the cost, the lives lost, the war we'd ignited, the sister I'd never see again. Then I looked at the planet, at the people around me, their faces lit with something I hadn't seen in years. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but it's a chance." He didn't reply, just stared out at the world we'd fought for. The Revenant settled into orbit, the Eclipse Legion arrayed behind it, and I knew this wasn't the end. The Council would come sooner or later, and we'd have to fight again. But for now, we'd won something. Time, a foothold, a spark. Humanity wasn't done. Not yet. As the first shuttles launched toward the surface, I made a choice. I'd stay with the Revenant, with Elias, with this ragged band of survivors. Not because I trusted him, or even believed in him, but because I believed in us. We'd shaken the galaxy to its core, and we weren't finished shaking it yet.